Good morning, everyone. I have the honor and the pleasure to moderate this panel. And given my role, I will be asking a series of questions, and we'll open the floor for questions. So, interesting presentations by Carl and Modupe thus far. Stellar performance year to date. Top line EBITDA margins very strong, but what keeps you up at night? What do you worry about?
Look, the thing I obsess about the most now is accelerating fintech. It's not that it keeps me up at night, but for this organization, for a sense of self-satisfaction and achievement, the acceleration of fintech active wallets is the passion that we have more than anything else. We're a very competitive organization. We enjoy outperforming the market. That's difficult to do when you're 2.5 times the size, 2.2 times the size of the closest competitor, because your absolute growth is always such a huge quantum. But we're very passionate about our competitive position, not because it makes a difference, but it gives a sense of satisfaction. We use it as a motivation tool. Clearly, the macro volatility is something that concerns me, but I have a man who can raise debt in Naira lower than sovereign to give me comfort in that space. But I guess if you lead an organization in a complex environment like ours, you're always scanning the horizon for everything possible. We are completely allergic to fines, which means compliance is non-negotiable. The word of a fine is a taboo in MTN Nigeria. You all know why. It relates back to a 2015 incident. But aside from that, and then most of all, the culture of the organization is very important to us.
Great, thanks. Good segue to Modupe. Yesterday was a lot of discussions on the macros. You do operate in an environment there's been a lot of volatility. Inflation is very, very key, and it'd be nice to understand how you're managing that. Also, the Royal Highness talked about what the government is doing in terms of using all the tools in its arsenal to, mobilize liquidity, stabilize the dollar. That has a knock-on effect on borrowing, particularly government borrowing. Interesting to know how you're also managing your cost of funds.
Well, I think for us, look, there are always two ways to look at it. You can look at it as a challenge, you can look at it as an opportunity. And, despite the strong headwinds, our job as the management is to see how we're going to optimize our cost structures to fit in within those strong headwinds. Now, of course, there are some things you still need some help with the policy, like right pricing to make sure that we're able to at least get the returns to our shareholders. So if you look at, if you look at what Mr. Edile said earlier, if I were actually to go and plot on my taxes year on year, the government has made 47% of increase, whilst we're almost drowning, which tells you that there is a mismatch somewhere in there. So if you look at my PAT now, at 9 months, probably was 10 over 5%. It was 17%, same time last year. So there's something definitely fundamentally wrong in that equation. So what we can do is to make sure that we have an expense efficiency program in place. The whole idea is to see what areas can we use to optimize, or what other better ways can we use to achieve the same results. So if you look at things that our CTO is doing in the technology space, Spectrum, what he's doing with what he calls massive MIMO, in other words, same sites which are paying a rental for, you take out some components 4x4 and you put in a 32x32. You avoid impairments by taking those things to less traffic sites. So all these things are what helps, cushion the impact on that. In terms of borrowing, of course, we leverage on our balance sheet. We leverage on the fact that we're AAA rated. We're leveraging on the fact that we have excellent advisors, like I'm not marketing for anybody, but at least I can say, like Stanbic, IBTC, and Chapeau, give them your good selves. So, and this helps, helps keep the market honest. Because at times we come up with some crazy asks, which you guys always tell us is impossible. But by the time you go and test the logic, you always find out we're also able to raise those funds at rates that are always normal, like some people have described as witchcraft, but I don't know. Anyway, I'll leave it at that.
I definitely can attest to the witchcraft. Ishmael is somewhere in the room, and we go through those battles, but it speaks to your stellar performance, your fortress balance sheet, highest rated corporate in Nigeria, AAA. So it's definitely worth something, and kudos to that. So, Babe, we chat often, and you've always said your job is to remain unseen. Anytime we see you means there's something brewing, but over the past few years, we haven't seen much of you. If you can help us, and Carl spoke about this, briefly about this tax of $42 million. If you could just maybe help us unpack it a little bit and see how, and let us know how you're managing this issue. I mean, you are a top 10 taxpayer. Carl talked about you paid more taxes than dividend. Why is this lingering issue?
I think the gentleman there, Mr. Ayodele, had spoken extensively about tax, but from our operating point of view, I think the biggest challenge we have with certain taxes is not at the federal level. Now, Modupe worries about the federal level, but where we have the most impactful taxes from a negative point of view are the subnational level, the states and the local governments. And let me explain why those are issues and why it keeps one awake on an ongoing basis. Now, if you have a challenge with the taxman or anybody at the federal level, there's a clear process you can follow to say, I don't agree with this tax, and you will have a conversation around it. If it's FIRS, for example, you go to TAT and all that. At the state and the local government level, where they come up with most of those taxes that he described as illegal, for example, telling you to pay emission control, or sometimes they tell you to pay for pest control, and they tell you that what they do is that they are spraying pesticides at your site, and for that you have to pay. And then the question, of course, is if you spray pesticides at my site and the pests go into people's houses, who deals with that? But that's a different story. The challenge is how they enforce those taxes. Because when they ask for these taxes and you challenge and say this is illegal, they shut down the base station. So that is more the problem. That is why we ask and we've been advocating for telecom infrastructure, which is really very critical, to be formally declared critical national information infrastructure, and to try to prevent that whatever the problem is between those subnationals and the telcos, they should be prevented from going to shut down the site. Because remember, even if they shut down the site, from a regulatory point of view, NCC is still going to hold me responsible for a certain quality of service. I'm not going to tell NCC, for example, that, oh, the sites went down because state A denied me access. The repercussions from the federal level at the NCC level remains the same for me. So in discussing taxes, while Modupe will be worried about the quantum and all that, I, maybe because I'm a lawyer, would prefer a situation where I have an ascertainable way of having a conversation with whoever is taxing me when there are disagreements, such that they don't use means that are outside the law to try to enforce those taxes, especially when they are illegal.
Thank you. Before we go to the floor, I just have one quick question for Carl. And Modupe talked about the revenue outlook to the rest of the year, but a lot of it seems to be dependent on the tariffs. So how dependent is MTN on this trajectory, this recovery? If you can speak more to the tariffs, I think it's going to be any increase.
I think we've clearly put forward the position of the industry in terms of sustainability of the investment profile, quality of service, continued coverage, penetration, and the dependency on that on tariff increases. I think the message has delivered well, and the Honourable Minister made a comment in public, and he was piled on as a result of this, but I think it demonstrates that the challenge is well understood. While the entire economic framework of this government is being laid out in detail, and there's so many moving parts, there's the fiscal reform, pricing, sustainability of the telecoms industry, the oil industry, etc., etc. The regulators are affording us some flexibility to make adjustments on some bundles, to at least on a short-term basis be able to keep the engine going, keep the investment path going, while we work towards a longer-term solution, which is a much more towards a price floor general uplift. I think it's also very well understood that we are the tallest tree in the forest, and we can take the weight of these forex devaluation impact, inflation impact, etc., a lot better than small operators. And the sustainability of the smaller operators is a challenge for the regulators. So they're looking at this holistically, and we're optimistic that it's a listening government. We will land it, but of course it's something delicate. In some ways, as the minister said, telco is almost more critical than food these days, you know? Yes. And people are more sensitive about telco price increase than food, but we are getting through specific bundle increases that's helping us.
Great, thank you. We'll open the floor for questions, and by show of hands, we will have the mic. I can see Mr. Taiwo Idele has a question.
Yes, thank you very much. Excellent conversations. My first one is to the CCSO, and these are some of the things we're trying to prioritize. So if a sub-national can just come and deny you access to your station, that's not good for Nigeria. And we want to be able to address that. So my request to you would be, if you haven't done that already, if you can put anything together, either as MTN or if you want to mobilize your sector and submit to us, what are you proposing that we should do about that? One of the things we're working on already is to set up the Office of Tax Ombudsman, so that there shouldn't be anyone who is the judge and jury and everything about it. They just wake up, decide something, and then they want to enforce it the next day. So we can address these problems once and for all. So I'll look forward to whatever you can share with us. The other comment I have, I think, is for Carl. And this is one of our recommendations in the quick wins, is we're saying to the government to say, level of trust is very low between the people and the government. And then you say you're giving 15 million households, 25 million, and nobody seems to even trust that. Even the register that has been created, you see governors saying they don't trust it, World Bank says, but it's okay. And we're not saying to government, why don't we use mobile phones to just do conditional cash transfers? For example, I can even identify whether you're poor from your behavior on your phone, right? So I see how much you load for voice, for data. You load 50 naira and you're flashing people for the whole month. I just know you're poor already. Can I not give you 5,000 on your phone that you then use maybe as food stamp? You even decide what you want. Not that I'm forcing rice on you. Maybe you want yam. And I don't seem to have clarity as to why we can't scale up, maybe like the Momo thing. So my question to you is there something you think we can do from the policy side so that we can use the kind of mobile that you guys are doing, not only for financial inclusion, but also for conditional cash transfer? Because today, first it was COVID-19, now we're having crisis because of fuel subsidy removal. You don't know what it will be tomorrow, but we need that framework to be effective and something that can also help with transparency in terms of government spending. Thank you.
I think you were interested.
Yes, I think for me the key thing is, yes, we have submitted papers to the committee through Alton and then as MTN. We have already submitted papers.
Thank you, Taiwo. Nice reversal of rules where we get to answer the questions to the public sector. But no, very happy to have that question. I think you're right, and there's already been discussions ongoing between the EBC and the National Identity Management Commission, how we can use our wealth of data and information to provide adequate information to the government around the income brackets of people across the country. Hassan, our CEO, seated right beside Ralph, is there. He's actually done an exercise like this in Afghanistan, I believe is right. So he's preparing that information for the relevant authorities so they can see who are the addressable markets. I'm very pleased with your Momo suggestion. We're going to grab it, and I'm going to camp outside the office for the next 2 months to ensure that mobile money is the channel we use to distribute these support to people across the country. And it really is the best solution, not marketing ourselves, because we have 7 million subscribers. With 3 steps with the USSD code, *671#, you can set up an account, get a PIN. In fact, the customer doesn't have to have an account. You can transfer it, and then for them to receive the account, or to receive the money, they activate the account. So we have a solution to reach everybody across the country, USSD and app as well. And they don't even have to have the account open ready yet. You can just transfer the money sitting for them to reach and activate. So we're happy to work with the government in the distribution, in the analysis, and we're already some way down that journey. So please to support in every way we can. Thank you.
Great. Any questions from the floor?
Mohammed's microphone. Thank you.
From SPG Securities. Carl, in your presentation, you mentioned the topic that resonates with me watching MTN over the years, in that the business has an uncanny ability to bounce back from extreme FX and macro events. So we're in one of those events now, and it does seem quite extreme in that you have both the Naira devaluation and you've got a large component of your cost dollarized through your tower leases and so on. You seem quite confident that the margins will bounce back in the next few years, back to the 50-odd% level. Would like to get a sense of what gives you that confidence, and whether it's more about driving the top line and operating leverage, or is it about the expense efficiencies that you've spoken about? Thank you.
So to be clear, it's about all, and we have to drive all in parallel. We do need to improve our yield and our effective rates per minute. We've already started that journey. We've done it in voice in the earlier parts of this year. We've started the journey in data, and we've done it in a multitude of factors. We've reduced our free traffic from about 19% to 7%, so that improves ERMB and improves yield. We are optimizing, with the approval of the regulator, some of our bundles. Approximately 30% of the most highly used and revenue generative bundles on data. So there's a top line expectation there. There's also a top line growth that we expect out of an improved competitive performance, improved quality of service, higher smartphone penetration, higher consumption. So top line needs to move on. Then there's operating leverage, cost management. And cost management is everything from looking at internal efficiencies, including our capital expenditure, the effectiveness of every dollar that we spend on capital expenditure, decreasing unitary costs, addressing things like tower co-leases by moving from dollar denominated towards Naira denominated, by moving from technology pricing towards space and power pricing. That explains some of the rationale around the decision we took to move the 2,500 sites, and we'll continue as tower co-leases expire to explore with the same rigor those options. And then there's internal efficiency management as well within. So top line, we need to improve. We need to improve from tariff increases, better competitive position, take advantage of the market opportunities that affords. Cost structures, we need to improve. big portion of that leases, but every other aspect of our expenditure, we look at rigorously, and Modupe has spoken to that we're actually ahead of our expense efficiency. Modupe, I think you have.
Yeah, I think that's fine. Exactly the same thing. That's why we put in the slide margin recovery. We feel that there are areas that we would use to repair the margins. Now, we've not given any guidance yet. We did say we'll look at that at the end of the year, and then we'll be able to see what's going to happen to that medium-term guidance. But at least we still see some low-hanging fruits that we can use to recover those margins.
Hello? Thank you so much for the opportunity. My name is Taj Ibrahim, Chapel Hill, Ghana. When Carl was making his presentation, he showed how the EBITDA margin was over 60% when the business was largely driven by voice. And I think now we have a situation where data is playing a more crucial role in terms of revenue accretion. But the margins are nowhere close to 60%. And at some point, there will be a situation where the data business revenue is higher than the voice. So I'm just trying to understand, would there be a point in the future that we will see the EBITDA margin somewhere close to 60% or possibly more? That's one. Two is around the CapEx intensity. At some point, we have seen it rising, and I'm trying to understand how much incremental impact should we expect on the EBITDA margin as intensity rises. Thank you.
Okay, can we have another question?
Okay. I'm Uchenna from Xerox Investment Management. So I have just two questions. One is on the issue of cyber security. As technology is advancing and MTN moving into a digital company fully, we also expect that fraud is also going to advance and more attacks in the future on this technology business that you are building. So as investors, we want to know what efforts MTN management is making, or what are their plans to handle these possible threats in the future. Then my second question is on the issue of the digital revenue. You've talked too much about the fintech, but from the financials over the years, where I personally have been seeing wonders is in your digital revenue. If you can share more light on what's driving that particular revenue. And lastly is on the issue of tax harmonization. So the taxman is very confident on MTN. So I would like to know, on this issue of tax harmonization, is there any talk going on maybe MTN Nigeria helping with the large amount of data that they have in collecting this tax, or helping in collecting this tax when it's harmonized? Then finally is on the revaluation losses going forward. So how is it going to impact the business going forward? Like the third quarter, we saw that the margin dropped in the EBITDA, mainly at the direct operation cost. So should we expect that the cost of running this business is going to be higher going forward? Are there efforts that the management is making to take us back to the 53% or more EBITDA margin? Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to answer one or two of the questions, but then I'm going to pass on to Shoyinka. So prepare yourself on cybersecurity and speak to the DDoS attacks which we experienced. I think that's a good example to show positivity. Aisha, can I see Aisha somewhere there? Wave your hand. Yeah, Aisha is there, and Hassan for digital revenue. Digital, great growth trajectory. I think 6% of revenue from digital is very possible. Hassan and Aisha will speak to that, and I'll leave Modupe to talk about tax harmonization, how we're helping already with the VAT aspect. But let me answer the first question. We will not get to 63% EBITDA margins. Those were the utopian days, and that happens really only with voice. And there's a multiple impact of that. A lot of that was driven by our market share, incoming voice revenue, because of our much larger base, and the nature of the cost structure around voice-focused businesses. But we have been able to consistently invest in data, and we are already now, as of today, I think it started in June or July, higher data revenue than voice. And that differential is actually just going to grow, even though voice continues to grow under that base. So 63%, that's a very long time ago, 2011, 2012, more than 10 years ago. That you would only ever see in voice-centric businesses. I don't think you ever see that in any telco, except you're a single operator in the market and you're charging excessive high prices. So the 50 range, I'm not giving any guidance, the 50 range for a business of our nature with increasing data revenue is reasonable, is a good delivery. You'll see in our full year earnings release when we engage with you what we see that to be. But I think that has answered the question. And the capex intensity, I think we've promised somewhere in the rate of 18% capex intensity. Can go 1% up or down. We will always try to manage that downwards if we see the opportunity to do so, but we don't do so at the cost of missing opportunities of the future. For example, 5G as an example. But no big expected in capex intensity, even as we accelerate on the fiber to the X space. We look for internal efficiency, unitary cost pricing, and then of course utilizing our existing assets as well as much as possible to manage our capex intensity. So I hope that answers Tajuddin's question. Shoyinka, you have a microphone here. You want to take the question on cyber security and speak to how we very skillfully suppress the DDoS attacks?
Thanks very much.
Forgive me, Shoyinka Shodunke is our Chief Information Officer. He has a dedicated general manager in his team, Gideon Adekile, who is dedicated to cyber security and information security as a whole. So he's the cyber security, of course, with Mohammed Ufai, our CTO, expert and champion. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Carl. And I think just to address the question, I think cyber security is what keeps most organizations at bay today. And it's something that we take very seriously as well. I think knowing the journey in which we've embarked on, which is to become a technology company rather than just a telco, in which we play in that space today, it's something we've reviewed and understood the implications we would have. So to address that, there's a program by the group of which certain standards have been set in terms of what we need to achieve. What we do with that is we understand that there are various touch points and there are various ecosystems that have actually grown just beyond the sort of traditional services that we do provide today. And to ensure that a lot of endpoints have been deployed just to ensure that we're not just covered as a telco, but we expand our coverage even beyond our own traditional services to the sort of new services that we do employ today. But just to touch on the point in which Carl did raise right now, which was on the DDoS attack. Sometime this year, we had the biggest DDoS attack within the continent. We were getting about 150 gigabytes of attack per second, which is about the biggest we've ever seen before. But our ability to be able to contain it, I think it does speak to the sort of readiness in which we had as a management and within the entire group as well. And I think that was well applauded across the industry in terms of our readiness. It's an area that keeps us awake. It's an area in which we keep investing in and we'll keep investing in. One of the things we do as well is in terms of the sort of assessments in terms of our readiness, of which we employ the big companies to come and look and review our processes and our readiness. We just had one about 3 weeks ago or 4 weeks ago where the whole management, we were gathered together and the processes were reviewed in terms of our readiness. Thanks.
Well, mindful of time, we do have some questions online, and I'll quickly ask, it's a question from Bank of America. and is, can you confirm if the increase in US debt in Nigeria is only driven by the Naira depreciation and that you're not adding new US debt? And is it mainly related to leases?
Okay, so, well, I'll answer that question. Yes, the increase in debt is mainly due to the revaluation or the devaluation of the Naira and the Naira equivalent. And that's what threw out some unrealized losses on the exchange. And while I still have the mic, there was a question that the previous speaker asked that in terms of tax harmonization and what we're doing, we're already doing a lot of initiatives with the government. And we're, for instance, one of the things that the previous administration implemented was actually from one of the things we complained about, which was the collection of VATs. Oftentimes as a player, we pay VAT to suppliers, but these VATs are not remitted over to the authorities. So feedback, they made us a direct agent, so we now withhold, collect on behalf of the government, and that has also helped increase the government revenues in that respect. So I think that's the comment on it.
And I think the question on digital revenue will be answered during Hassan's presentation,
yes.
to save time. Sorry.
Thank you. So thank you, everyone. Okay, Mr. Nona, I will give you the last question. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Probably before I raise my question, I need to take the permission of the chairman of the boards and also ask that permit me to also use him to justify why we didn't clap for Modupe. First, I can confirm to you that much earlier in the day, a lady approached Carl. I don't like your hairstyle. And what Carl did was to order for Brazilian hair, and then that got better. By the time he met the second lady, I don't like your glasses and your eyelash. And then Carl got new orders, fixed them up. So you begin to understand why they didn't clap for you. However, between the two of you, it's important that as an investor, should your earnings go lower than it is compared to last year, and because you have a dividend policy, will the company be willing to take part of the reserve to even what you paid last year in the new year? Because one of the things I've also heard, in terms of data, we've done well. In terms of manpower, we have exceeded targets. In terms of tax, we are harmonizing. So I hope all of this will also be a benefit that will go to the shareholders. So Modupe, now you will now see why they didn't clap for you, because the man who takes the bullet when the AGM comes is Carl, who is likely to wear bulletproof. Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator.
Okay, so I'll just answer that in the interest of transparency. Good thing is that as the chairman of the audit committee, I'm going to actually approve those resolutions whenever they do come. But having said that, I think I can't speak on behalf of the board. The board, that's sole prerogative of the board what to do in terms of the year-end results or declaration. But rest assured that the things the board would always consider is with the volatility in the exchange, you have enough reserves to cater for difficult situations. Now, based on from where you sit as an investor and then the chairman of our statutory audit committee, you're quite aware that there are some PLCs that actually have the entire reserves wiped out. That is zilch. They're actually negative reserves. I won't mention names, but you just check them on the exchange. Now, MTN as it is still has reserves and actually has made a profit despite these headwinds. So that just tells you about the strength of the company's financials. Now, whatever the board is going to decide is going to be based on the outlook of what we see or where we see the economy heading. And look, like everybody's, I actually belong to the school of thought that the worst is over. I mean, look, we devalued the currency from 460 to 777 as at October 902. Okay, so you're not going to have that quantum of devaluation going forward. It doesn't matter whichever statistic you're looking at, be it the EIU or any outlook for where Naira should be in the next 2 to 3 years. As long as you don't have that quantum of devaluation, that steepness, almost 100% now, if you don't have that year on year, then you're not likely to have the strong impact in terms of your unrealized losses going forward. So if we subscribe to that school of thought, then things can only get better from next year after you take a hit in 2023, and then you start seeing a recovery. Whatever the board decides in terms of returns to shareholders, that's beyond my pay grade, and I cannot speak for the board. Thank you.
Thank you, Mudukwe. We do have a fun day. Hassan will come and present, and then Eli will also talk about fintech. I think you have an opportunity to ask more questions during those sessions. So thank you very much. Please, a round of applause for our panel.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We appreciate you. Thank you.